today to let the New York Times executives know that there is no New York Times without your labor.
And we don't want to go on strike, but management isn't listening to us. By withholding our labor, we are sending a clear message. They can't just give out stock dividends and buybacks like candy to shareholders and not give us a fair share.
More than 1,100 New York Times employees are currently undergoing a 24-hour strike following 20 months of unsuccessful contract negotiations with executives. Now, oftentimes when we think of print journalism and how a lot of it is dying and isn't profitable, it's important to keep in mind that the New York Times is a completely different animal. Their profits are insane, and the writers are rightly asking for pay raises to share the wealth that they help generate for the New York Times. Now, this is the first major walkout at the Times since 1981, and even back then, that strike only lasted 6.5 hours. The strike today lasts a full 24 hours, and they're asking users not to cross the digital picket line by not using the New York Times site or playing New York Times owned games like Wordle and the crossword puzzle. And yes, if you were on Twitter today, you probably noticed some people posting their Wordle results on Twitter and getting some backlash for it. But be kind, they might not know that there's a strike going on, so just keep that in mind. With that said though, let's give you some details on what's transpiring here. Now, Times Guild members represented by News Guild of New York are pushing for a $65,000 salary floor and funding employees' health insurance sustainably. So they are concerned with how the New York Times is actually funding their healthcare plans less and less. They're also concerned that looking at the amount of profits that the New York Times has been making, they're certainly not giving the writers the increase, the wage increases that they should be getting. Their previous employee contract did expire March of 2021, so last year, and workers say that the cost of living, understandably in a place like New York, is incredibly expensive, and they need to make more money in order to be able to live in the city they work in. Now, some workers have had to take second jobs just to make ends meet. There are even some examples of workers taking money out of their retirement plans in order to pay for housing and just the high cost of living in New York. The union is arguing for a package of raises that works out to a 5.25% overall annual raise over the 4-year period covered, which includes the past 2 years. The company's most recent offer, as of late Tuesday night, represented exactly half of that. I mean, okay, let me keep going. Let me give you more details, because I think their profits, you need to know about that. In a letter to members this week, union organizers wrote that we cannot get to a deal until the company makes wage and benefit proposals that truly share the company's gains with its employees. They accused the company Wednesday evening of failing to bargain in good faith, okay? Now, yesterday, the New York Times Guild, which represents about 1,400 New York Times workers, announced their decision to move forward with the walkout, and they tweeted this. There was good news and bad news after 12 hours of bargaining yesterday. Our collective action is working. Management backed off its attempt to kill our pension, Jesus Christ, and agreed to expand fertility benefits. But managers still barely budged on some of our most important priorities. The company is stuck on paltry pay increases, eroding the minimum pay scales for new hires, and contributing less to our healthcare fund than they currently do. And they've also failed to come to an agreement on requirements for in-person work. So the whole remote work drama is still playing out at the New York Times, as it is in many other companies. The Guild said that management walked away from the table a little before 7 p.m. and refused to return with 5 hours to go. But let's talk about whether or not the New York Times can actually afford this, right? Because print journalism, it's just in a lot of trouble, except for the New York Times. The New York Times share price has actually risen by about half in the past 4 years. The newspaper remains on a path to 15 million digital subscriptions by the end of 2027. It recently acquired The Athletic for $550 million and has embarked on an ambitious stock buyback initiative. Top executives, including CEO Meredith Kopit Levien and publisher A.G. Sulzberger, have received major raises, and the company pledged $150 million in stock buybacks this year alone. And final graphic I'll read to you, because this is where the money is. Executives said in their latest earning call that they had grown the newsroom and projected a total adjusted operating profit of between $320 million and $330 million by the end of the year.
Yep. So whenever you're looking at these stories, you know what the general sense of what the right and the left are going to say, right? Mm-hmm. But as usual, we're balanced and we give you all the different perspectives. So I would look at three different things. Number one is, what is the health of the company? Is it barely surviving? Is it really profitable? What's its state? Number two is, what are the market rates? So, hey, are they getting paid more or have better benefits than the rest of the market or not? So a company could be doing great, but they might already be at market rates or above market rates, et cetera. So, okay, that's a factor. And then of course, inflation is a factor when you're talking about percentage raises, right? So a 3% raise a couple of years ago might have been pretty good. Now it doesn't even keep up with inflation, so you're going backwards, right? So now when you look at those factors in relation to the New York Times, they're doing great. Mm-hmm. They're making over $300 million in profits. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, that's great. And their executives getting raises, no problem. You did a fantastic job. You're one of the few companies that are making money. I think the New York Times is very biased towards a pro-corporate position.
Yes, it is. And I think that's an important part of the story, which we'll get to in just a moment.
We'll come back to that. But hey, they delivered on their job of being pro-corporate well, so they made a lot of money, right? And so I don't begrudge their executives getting the money, God bless. I don't even begrudge the buybacks. But your employees were also part of that success, right?
A huge part of that success.
And so in good times when you're doing well, and by the way, a lot of the employees, including some of the prominent ones, like their film critic for over 20 years, said, hey, I remember when we had to cut back in lean times. Mm-hmm. No, so now here we are in good times. Why are you guys the only ones getting a significant raise? That makes a lot of sense. So given the totality of this circumstance, I think that the workers are totally right, and the New York Times is being counterproductive and obstinate.
I agree with you on that. So I'm gonna be full, I can only be myself, and that's 100% honest with you guys, because I almost didn't want to cover this story today because of the pro-corporate coverage in the New York Times. So here you have unionized workers who understand what it means to be a worker in this country, a worker for a company that is publicly traded, a company that has its fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders as opposed to its workers, a company that, like any other corporate environment, sees its workers as a massive cost that needs to be cut down as much as humanly possible to increase profits. So when you yourself, as a writer at the New York Times, have seen it, have experienced it, you know how the machine works, you know how the game is played, maybe have a little more, empathy for labor and for workers across the board. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see a combination of all of their stories about the rail worker strike situation.
Yes, Cenk. Okay, so the way I wanted to produce this story, but I didn't want to cross the digital picket line, so we didn't end up doing this, is I wanted to see what their coverage of the rail worker strike looked like, right? Because everything that I saw from corporate media was, if they go on strike, it's gonna destroy the economy.
And the workers are putting the economy in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of the mainstream, again, we're being fair, because of the strike, we didn't go on New York Times, et cetera. And we're talking mainly about the mainstream press in general, okay? But we did cover that story about a dozen times now. Mm-hmm. And almost all the mainstream media articles said that the workers put the country and Biden, et cetera, in this situation, but they never clarified that not only could Biden force the strikers to take a deal, but he could force management to take a deal.
Yes.
And so that what that did was it created pressure on the workers, but no pressure on management. And if you thought the New York Times was making a lot of money, the rail companies are making $20 billion in profits over a recent period of time, right? So, but yet the reporters, the editors, and all the other people that work in mainstream media, although they might be workers in this context, when they go to write the article, they're like, oh, the workers, and they should be forced to do this, and poor management. They never mention it. It's all in the framing, guys. It's all in the framing.
And look, they have union protection, and I think if you're a writer and you feel that your writing is edited down so significantly by the editors, where that kind of messaging and that information is cut out, I mean, maybe that needs to be part of the negotiations, right?
They'll never do that, ever, ever, ever. And I'll tell you right now, they might go on strike, they might go do all these things. But if you say to an editor enough times, I think we're framing this wrong. I think we need to be fair to
labor,
to the left, to the average American, etc. You're not going to advance. You might not get fired, you might, but if you don't get fired, you're never going to advance. And everyone in the building knows it. And this is not just exclusive to the New York Times. Like in my book, I write about how Ashley Banfield got moved into a closet because she, actually dared to tell the truth at MSNBC. So this is the kind of things that workers know. Management loves the pro-corporate position and will not allow anything else. So by the way, my book, and you can find the link, is justiceiscomingbook.com.
Okay, so someone on my team, on the main show team, producer Kate, who you guys have met on the bonus episode before, went on Google News and just searched New York Times rail workers strike to see what headlines pop up. She didn't click on them. Here are some of the headlines. One from November 21st. Key freight rail union rejects deal, increasing strike risk.
Well, how about rail company refuses to give fair deal, thereby increasing the risk of the economy turning down, etc. Like it makes it seem like the company has nothing to do with these negotiations.
Right, the company is totally benign, right? The management and the executives totally benign. It's the workers. They're increasing the risk of a strike. Here's another one from November 29th. Video, rail strike would put, oh my God. Rail strike would put nation's economy at risk, Biden says. That's the headline.
That sounds like the USA Today headline that I yelled about over a decade ago. Right? It makes it seem like just exactly what I told you earlier in the video, in this video, where they don't say, oh, poor management or poor railroad companies, bad employees. But look at the framing. The framing is the strikers are endangering the country, the economy, and poor Biden.
Poor Biden.
And I literally said earlier in the video, they make it seem like the strikers are hurting Biden.
Yeah.
But never is it discussed, hey, why don't the CEOs just give them a couple of sick days off? So here the New York Times workers, I think, are doing the right thing, and we want to show solidarity with them. But when you go back to work, please remember today in your writing, when you're writing about other people and their work.
Other labor struggles, yeah, exactly.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.